If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy. Download and subscribe at BeBullish.com.
Instagram teen accounts have automatic protections for what teens see and who can contact them, plus time management tools. And Instagram will continue adding built-in safety features to help create age-appropriate experiences. Learn more about teen accounts and Instagram's ongoing work to protect teens online at instagram.com/teen accounts.
Feisty, fearless, and fair. She's an Emmy-winning journalist from the White House to war zones, telling all sides of the story. This is the Rita Cosby Show.
Tonight on the Rita Cosby Show, President Trump signing off on a 10% global tariff after the ruling from the Supreme Court. So he doesn't waste any time signing off on a full throttle, full encompassing 10% tariff after the Supreme Court issues. Definitely a blow to the Trump administration. But President Trump, always the fighter, says he's going to keep on going, that he believes this is good for America, good for American pocketbooks, and he says that there are other ways to impose a tariff than go through the process of which the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, ruled that down. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. And you are listening to the Rita Cosby Show. Meantime, also lots of stuff happening in the Nancy Guthrie case in terms of internal politics. Sadly, it doesn't sound like any big break in the cases in store. And that is heartbreaking now that we are reaching week 3. Take a listen, because this is Arizona reporter Brianna Whitney, and she was talking about the fact that a number of people tied to the case, particularly Sheriff Chris Nanos of Pima County. He's the one who a lot of people say is being territorial with his information. Well, he is apparently saying we can't rule out that it's more than one individual tied to the kidnapping of Nancy Guthrie. Take a listen.
Well, is the sheriff any closer to determining if the person we see in that video surveillance even acted alone?
I mean, he went on the record today and said that they are looking into the possibility that there was an accomplice. That's still a possibility. To be honest, it feels like anything's a possibility at this point. It feels like we're still going with DNA. We're waiting for those results to come back in. We're hopeful that there will be new surveillance video and pictures. We know they're trying to go through the other cameras that were on Nancy Guthrie's property. We now know they're also testing biological evidence that was found in the home as well. So could there be an accomplice? It sounds like the sheriff says that's still a possibility, but there's so many parts of this investigation that are outstanding. It seems like we need some of those results back to make more of a concrete answer on that. Obviously, we hope to find that soon as we near 3 weeks of her gone, which is honestly shocking to say.
Yeah, that is shocking to say. We see your calls coming in here. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. Meantime, here is Arizona Sheriff Mark Lamb, and he is from a neighboring county. And he said there's a lot of questions about this case. He said this is really a weird one because it just does not add up.
Well, originally I was dubious of the letters, the ransom letters. So the kidnapping, felt a little weird. It's not a cartel. It doesn't follow that suit. The cartel doesn't typically kidnap American citizens. They kidnap fellow cartel people, rivals. And so those didn't fit real well. And then when we saw the video, it felt like it didn't feel that professional.
Yeah.
The guy who's reaching for the leaves to cover the camera, all that.
Yeah. And, one of my questions is, and we were just talking about this in the back room, is you see the video when he's trying to cover up the camera when he first comes there, but then somewhere he takes the camera. So did he take it after he brought her out of the house? We see the blood on the front porch. Did something go wrong? And did he take the camera at that point? Because up until that point, he hadn't taken the camera. He was trying to use bushes to cover it up.
Right.
And so now you start to say, well, did something go wrong? And did they then have to remove whatever evidence they could? Which would also explain the non-proof of life and how quiet this case has gone.
It is stunning how quiet this case has gone. And that's not good news, obviously, for Nancy Guthrie. It's definitely not good news, obviously, for the family that's just been praying left and right for good news and praying to get any lead that they can. But 3 weeks is not a good sign. I can't believe we're here. I'm still in shock, guys, that it has dragged on this long. I thought with all the effort, all this attention, it would be solved so much quicker. And Sheriff Mark Lamb also says that he believes that this will be solved and it probably will take an electronic path to pull it together. This is cut number 31. And this is Arizona Sheriff Mark Lamb talking about the role that social media is playing in this case.
I think ultimately that will break the case. You'll find these search engines, but you've got to find what channel to go down, what path to go down. Maybe you get that one investigative lead. And then when you start to crack into the digital evidence at their homes, that's when this case will start to unfold. You got those people that were detained. Now, when you get those search warrants are going to be very limited because the judge has very little to work off of. So I imagine the scope was very limited on those houses where they detained those folks. And so maybe they didn't have the ability to take the digital evidence from the home. But digital evidence, I think, will ultimately be what cracks this case. And maybe the DNA.
Let's hope it happens soon, because every day is precious. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Susan in Corning, New York on line 1. Go ahead, Susan.
Hey there, Rita. I'm just, always like this, all the breaking news on the tariff. But in the meantime, you got to keep an eye on Mandani, his effects of his policies, to raise property taxes. He's at a budget crisis, which may even shut down your New York City government, and God knows what else, not to mention that you still haven't even cleaned up a snowstorm from almost a month ago. But I just wanted to say, because I know what, I spent some of my youth in the Detroit suburbs because my dad worked in the auto industry. And, after I moved out, went to college, lived in Chicago and then New York City, Detroit, in 2014, they had a Detroit Blight Removal Task Force project because the city of Detroit, many of the city towns, had so much abandoned buildings and blight structures that they ended up like.
But what's your point? I'm confused, Susan. What's your point?
My point is, I see so many parallels, and I hate to say this. It kills me because I think New York City could be on that parallel. And, maybe people have forgotten about it because it's from 2014 to now. 40,000 homes were demolished. They were bulldozed because if people abandon, if they're under water on their mortgages and the crime and the taxes, they will just move out. You will have squatters. You will have abandoned buildings. I pray to God this will not happen.
I do too, by the way. I pray you're wrong, but you're right in the sense that that's what happens. If you start charging people, like, first of all, one of the things that Mandani's trying to hold New York State hostage with is, okay, we want to see you increase taxes to the wealthy and corporations. Well, what's going to happen? Successful individuals are going to flee New York. They're not going to want to be in New York. They're not going to want to hire people, companies, wealthy individuals. They're going to leave. And then if you freeze the rent, then they can't make any money on these apartments. So a lot of them will leave them empty. And then if you raise property taxes, which is one of the other alternatives that Mandani's threatening, guess what? You think 9.5% property tax increase? That is stunning. That's earth shattering. You will see an exodus like no tomorrow out of New York. And sadly, I think your image is not far from reality. Put it that way, Susan. And that is really sad because New York is such a great city. But I think Mandani, if he pushes these policies and pushes them to the brink, he will destroy New York quicker than I ever imagined he would. And that's not even, that's his fiscal policies, his ideology creeping in, because in the middle of all this, Susan, he still wants to spend $1.2 billion with a B on migrants. I mean, you can't make it up. Susan, thank you very much. Great points. And unfortunately, let's pray that you're wrong, and that New York stays strong. Let's go to David in Staten Island. Line 2. Go ahead, David.
Rita, the mayor is not only doing what he's doing, but there are more mosques being built in New York City. They may outdo the Christian churches. We are looking toward a very bad situation that's being formulated. The empty buildings will be filled in by Islam. Do a think about it.
Well, you know what, David? I will tell you what's been really disheartening is there are a number of people that he put on a couple of his different task forces. And some of them are members of sort of the New York Democratic Socialists of America. And a number of these groups came out right after October 7th and condemned Israel for their genocidal behavior, as opposed to the victims, Israel, for what happened to them. So that spoke volumes to me. And those are the people he's putting on his staff. And then what about when this issue happened? Sadly, remember where those folks at the temple, at the very famous temple in New York, when suddenly all these protesters, trying to block the door so parishioners couldn't come in. I mean, first of all, you can't block a house of worship. And that's what they did. They were not, far away. They were right there next to them. That was discouraging. That was troubling. There were so many issues that happened with that. And what did he do? One of his staffers condemned the parishioners, those in the temple. They didn't condemn the protesters. So I agree with you. His values are so askew. Pray for New York, David. That's all I can say. Pray for New York. Let's go to Mike on the Lower East Side on line 3. Mike, your thoughts tonight.
How you doing, Rita? Yeah, Savannah's got to make up reward posters and put them all over through Mexico.
Are you talking about the Nancy Guthrie case? Is that right, Mike?
Yes, Rita.
Okay.
Yeah, put them throughout all of Mexico. Try and get them in churches this Sunday. Have the priest mention something. Posters. This guy might circle on back into the United States. If he did go to Mexico, he might go down to Tijuana, come into San Diego. It's only 17 miles across at the border. So they might come into California or they might come into New Mexico. But I think they're going to come into California. But they got to put posters in California, New Mexico, all the bordering states. But especially California, New Mexico, but put them throughout all of Mexico. These guys, they're gonna want, if they're from America, they're gonna want to come back here. And California is a good place for them to hide. But yeah, our prayers are with them. But Savannah's got to put a nice picture with her and her mother, maybe with her kissing her mother, because the Mexican people don't put up with crap like this, when they hurt senior citizens. They don't like that, and they will, believe me, they'll come down heavy on them, and they're going to look for them. So, and put a nice number, put a reward if they can, but they got to get these printed posters out, maybe tomorrow. Have printers, caller printers in Mexico all over.
Yeah, but Mike, let me ask you, and I agree with you on this to get the word out because it's so close. I have to ask your thoughts. The fact that we're hearing that the FBI or local authorities, it seems like it's local authorities who are in charge of it all. They want to be, and are the allegations are kind of withholding information even from the feds, which if that's true, that's horrible. But that they haven't really signaled to Mexico. They haven't put a quote formal request in. In other words, here it's been 3 weeks. You are, 60 miles from the border. And you haven't put a formal request in with the Mexican authorities. To me, that's one of the first places I would look. Because even if it's not tied to Mexico or cartels, somebody could be bringing somebody from there. Somebody could be taking, Nancy Guthrie across the border, even if they don't have a Mexico tie, just to get her out of the country, knowing that they could slip away a lot easier. I mean, there are so many reasons why that would be one of the first things I would do. And we're hearing that they haven't even, quote, made a formal request. There was a report earlier today, Mike, that the Mexicans were saying, when we get a formal request, we'll be happy to cooperate. But unless they get a formal request, they're not going to cooperate. How is that possible, Mike? Let me ask you that really quick. How is that possible 3 weeks later? I'd be furious.
Oh, Rita, they could be putting blame on the feds too. It's if they were really looking to help people, they'd call us up. Is there anything we could do? I mean, if they were really that concerned, what are you just standing by watching an 84-year-old woman be put in a friggin' body bag and dragged over or something like that? Man, do nothing.
I agree. I know. I hear what you're saying. They should be proactive. I agree. They absolutely should be proactive. 1-800-848-9222. Everybody, we will continue your calls after the break. Mike, thanks so much.
It's the Rita Cosby Show.
Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our country has to offer, especially health care. Across every state, every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.
Rural Americans deserve access to the best our nation has to offer, especially when it comes to health care. Across every state and every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families' health. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care. Rural Americans deserve access to the best our nation has to offer, especially when it comes to health care. Across every state and every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families' health. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.
Rita Cosby is on.
And since it is a Friday night, we're also going to be talking about these wild developments, guys, tied to UFOs. President Trump coming out saying that he will make the UFO files public like he did with the JFK and RFK and MLK cases. So what's in there? I went to Area 51 a number of years ago. That was quite an experience. There was a lot of security. There were a lot of strange happenings there. We'll get to that a little bit later on in the show. Let's go to Norm on line 5. Norm, you're here on the Rita Cosby Show. Go ahead, my friend.
Yeah. Hi, Rita. Yes. I understand the Somali community wants reparations from the U.S. Well, I want reparations from Somalia for the 18 American servicemen who were killed October 3rd, 1993 in that godforsaken country, okay? To include Randy Shugart, Gary Gordon, Special Forces operators, and the bulk of them were U.S. Army Rangers, who they dragged through the streets. Okay.
Norm, do me a favor. We have a break. I want you to stick with us because I want to get you after the commercial break, if you don't mind, because we have a hard break here, because that's a very, very important point.
It's the Rita Cosby Show. It's the Rita Cosby Show.
Well, there are reports of fresh protests in Iran tonight. That's a great sign. The people taking to the streets. And let's first of all pray for their safety against this ruthless regime. And let's see what happens. This weekend, there are reports that as soon as this weekend, there could potentially be maybe some strategic strikes against sites in Iran by the president of the United States. He's still hoping Iran's going to come to the table, giving them chance after chance. But a military attack could also be imminent. You know, President Trump loves the element of surprise. And earlier today on Katz and Cosby, we talked with General David Petraeus. Of course, he certainly is one of the former top-ranking generals in America, also former CIA director. And this is his assessment of air and ground capabilities and what could be in store.
He would like to use leverage. Keep in mind, John, that Iran is essentially defenseless right now against air attack. The Israelis with our F-35s took out the sophisticated Russian S-300 air and ballistic missile defense system. They then took down just about all the rest of the air defense elements that were of significance. So they should know that they cannot really defend against what it is. They have no Air Force, of course. They have old F-14 Tomcats from way, way back. So we can do almost whatever we want to do through the sky, and that would be an enormous damage. The problem is, of course, we can't actually bring about regime change, likely, through the air. And that's the issue here, because, of course, the president said help is on the way. When the demonstrators were on the streets, they're back out there now, by the way. But this is the conundrum. He has enormous leverage because of all the military power he has assembled. But is the supreme leader, this very, very old individual, almost 87, is he willing to make a deal? And it's not clear that he is.
And that is the big decision. And also, how do you create regime change? I think, by the way, talk about heroes, those people out there in Iran that are now protesting on the streets, getting back out there again, knowing how many of them were slaughtered in recent weeks, even in their hospital beds. This is an extraordinary sign of courage and bravery and thirst for freedom. So bravo to them. Speaking of the skies, this is wild, guys. President Trump is going to be releasing government UFO and also extraterrestrial life files, saying that when he opens up the records, it will be extremely interesting and important. And here is Congressman Tim Burchett, who said he has been dying to see this information made public. He saw some of it in classified settings, but take a listen to what he had to say about President Trump and how he commends him for making this move that no president has done before.
I hope so. I think President Trump believes in transparency like you and I do. And he said enough is enough with this nonsense. You know, I was in a meeting a few weeks back and we asked, why isn't the president talking about this? And he said, well, the president's on a need to know basis. And I thought to myself, if I can ever get a minute alone with President Trump and let him know he's on a need to know basis, I think this thing will turn around. And apparently he got the message and he's putting it out. And I'm glad we can handle it. You can't trust a government that doesn't trust its people with just the truth. And this is the truth, and we need to get it out. And the government's probably going to be at a little bit of loss. But honestly, sir, I would like for the American public to see the things that I've seen.
I wonder what he's seen, the way he says it. I'd like for the American public to see what I have seen. Look, there have been some people that are Navy pilots, highly regarded Navy pilots, that are out there saying, I was flying and suddenly this object came by and I know it wasn't anything other than a UFO, that there's no way, there's no other explanation for it. And these are like credible people. These aren't like people in a psychiatric hospital. These aren't like loony kazoonies. I do believe that there's life out there. I believe there's something out there. So the question is what? And also the question is, what was kept hidden from the American public all this time? Well, here is Tim Burchett, who says that it is full throttle time. It is time to put it all out there. And here he is.
I really don't know what they're going to put out. I would hope that everything that I've seen and every meeting that I've had and every video and every picture that I've had and seen in confidence in what they call the skiff that I'm not allowed to talk about, I would hope that those would be put out to the American public. But I feel like there's a whole lot more and that needs to be put out. And until they do, it's still going to be a mystery. And but I do believe there's people in government that honestly want this out and maybe have some of this information, but really just don't know what they have. I feel like that's why they've given it to these major corporations, so we can't FOIA them. As a member of the media, Freedom of Information Act, we can request it as government from another government agency, and they supposedly have to give it up. But if they give it to, they haven't given it to Ford Motor Company, but say we want to know about their new fuel injection, and they don't have to come to Congress and tell us that. But if it was a government entity, they would. But they've given a lot of the information, the technology to some corporations under the guise of a government business cooperative kind of thing to keep us from getting it. And I believe it's kind of a chess game with them.
This is interesting. What are they hiding? Will there be some big whoppers? I mentioned you guys, I went out to Area 51. There was massive security. I also went to a location where they showed all these images of these different sightings throughout the world, including a whole bunch of ones in Washington, other countries. No explanation for all these items. They didn't look like anything that you would have seen before. There weren't drones back then, especially in the 1950s and 60s and 30s and 20s. So what were they? What's the explanation? 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. And by the way, we are talking about the Nancy Guthrie case also tonight. I can't believe it's heading into week 4. Who would have ever thought that? And so far to date, the Arizona sheriff is saying that more than 21,000 tips have come in to date. Many of them since that surveillance footage came out of the guy with the mask on and putting his flowers. Remember the flowers that he took in front of the camera there at Nancy Guthrie's house. 21,000 tips. And so far, right now, it seems they're at square one. I pray a break comes at any minute. But there are reports that the sheriff is withholding information from the FBI. And if that's the case, what a disgrace. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Norm in Brooklyn. Sorry, Norm. You brought up, before we switch topics, I want to go back to what we were talking about because you made a very powerful statement. And of course, I was thinking about Black Hawk Down. That was the time where you talked about the 18 U.S. service members that were killed there in Somalia. It was October, I believe, 1993.
October 3rd.
Oh, wow. Look at you. You know it very well. 15 hours, right? When they went in, the helicopters were shot down. And then it was that dramatic rescue that was profiled in that very powerful movie. Mark Bowden, right? I remember. I feel like I met Mark. I remember a number of years ago.
In front of me.
Wow, look at you. Look at you. So yeah, I mean, when I just think about how it was heartbreaking. And soon after that, President Clinton pulls out. But you're right. You sit there, and for these people, after everything that happened in Minnesota with the $9 billion fraud, reports of them putting cash on, in suitcases, carrying it off at the airport, and yet now they want reparations for what they say was an intrusion by ICE. I mean, I use the phrase cojones. Even if you don't know Spanish, you know what that means. I mean, that really does take a real set of cojones, right, Norm?
Yes, it does. I would use the word chutzpah. Of course, that's a Yiddish word. Don't spit when you say it, Rita, though.
I won't. Anyway, I won't. And by the way, I love that word, too. That's a good one, too.
Yes. But, it is not only the 18 that were killed, it was 70 that were gravely wounded. Okay. I mean, it is, a lot of destroyed lives from, the Mogadishu conflict. We were liberators. All right. We went there to fix their messed up country, which after 33 years is still messed up. Okay. It's a country of warlords and it is still a very messed up place. Okay. And this is the ingratitude of their community. Okay. That they spit in the face of their liberators. Okay. They're living in nice, placid USA. Okay. Sort of. And scamming, doing plenty of scamming apparently. And, now they want reparations. Okay. It's amazing. It
is amazing. But you know what it shows? It shows that they believe they can say that with a straight face because Keith Ellison, remember when he went under oath, remember he was voluntarily testifying, but he wouldn't even answer a single question. Remember the first question was, hey, what's your job title? And he wouldn't even say that he's the Attorney General of Minnesota. Like he was like, thought he was like too hot to trot, that he didn't even have to answer what his job title was. He just sat there with that big smirk. And I don't blame, who was it? Ron Johnson, who, John and I talked to, Senator Ron Johnson, who was so infuriated. Can you imagine you have somebody there? There's a $9 billion fraud. You're the Attorney General. You're the top crime fighter in the state. And he sits there with a big smile like, ha, 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 catch me if you can, I guess, I mean, it's sort of, they feel emboldened and they feel like, to this point, there really hasn't been a lot of people held responsible for it. I don't know who is, but there's some interesting stuff with, Keith Ellison. There's these reports that Keith Ellison, in fact, even, had, some recording. There's this recording of where he meets with them and suddenly they get, he gets a donation in his campaign. And the allegation is it was a bit of a pay for play. I don't know if that's true, but that's what one of the reports are. So, I mean, either way, when you have a $9 billion scam in your state, whether you're aware of it or not, I think you should get the smile off your face.
I agree.
Yeah, I do too. And for these people to sit there and say that, by the way, the other thing I thought of, Norm, as we're talking about Somalia, how about Captain Phillips? Remember, that was a great movie with Tom Hanks.
Sure.
I met the real Captain Phillips. I met Tom Hanks too, but I met the real Captain Phillips. And he said that story was very true. That it was just like that was, at that moment where they were surrounded by the Somali pirates, remember? So, I mean, they're still not giving fair access to American, cargo ships and others. Come on.
Not a place to go to vacation.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I would skip Mogadishu and the rest of Somalia. I agree. Yeah. Norm, thank you. You're always terrific. Have a great weekend. Let's go to Tom in Boston on line 3. Tom, your thoughts tonight.
Rita, I was just wondering, now, if you take more than $10,000 in a suitcase when you go on a plane, you'll get arrested. But these Somalis were taking hundreds of thousands of dollars in suitcases on a plane. There has to be corruption somewhere.
Yeah, well, you know what, Tom?
Get away with that.
Tom, it was even more. There are reports that they had like up to $1 million. You know what's so crazy, Tom? There are reports that they even reported it at the airport, that they would say, hi, I'm bringing $1 million back, whatever the claim was. I'd be curious exactly to your point. What were they saying was the reason? Didn't that raise some eyebrows that it's $1 million in cash? I'd say that looks a little fishy. I mean, who's the person at the airport who said, oh, have a good trip? I mean, can you imagine? Hi, I'm going to Mogadishu, a place where there is so much terrorism and corruption, and I'm taking $1 million from Somalia, and then next week I'm going to take another $1 million. Who's the person who said, enjoy your flight? I mean, it was like right out there in the open. That's why it's just inconceivable, Tom. There has to be some accountability, right?
Right, yeah, this Walls and Fry, they have to be in on it, because this is unbelievable. This is corruption. Unbelievable. How can this happen in America?
It is shocking. And so far, nobody accountable. The only person, by the way, Walsh, remember, said he is not going to run again. That's the most, but he says he's a victim of politics. He's the governor and just had no idea, like Sergeant Schultz. So, I do hope, the good news is it looks like there's a lot of people in Congress on the Republican side, at least, that seem to care about this and continue to look at this. And all you hear on the, with the Ilhan Omars and the others is, oh, it's racist. Yeah. It's not, corruption is not racist. Corruption is corruption. It doesn't matter the color. Tom, thank you very much. You brought up some great points. We need to figure out who was, aware of those, very hefty packed suitcases. I would say $1 million in a suitcase or suitcases. It's busting through the seams. And yet, have a good flight. So I think there's a lot that needs to be looked into. Tom, great points. Everybody, we're going to continue your calls after the break. 1-800-848-9222. But first, support our heroes.
The Rita Cosby Show presents Support Our Heroes.
And this is the Tunnel to Towers Foundation Support Our Heroes segment, everybody, with a very powerful story from Lawton, Oklahoma, where the Oklahoma Military Heritage Foundation inducted Sergeant First Class U.S. Army veteran Benny Coleman into the Military Hall of Honor. The Oklahoma Military Hall of Honor Ambassador Committee Chairman and a number of others made the very special induction before family and friends of veteran Coleman, who served in the U.S. Army and also the National Guard from 1999 to 2018. He participated in Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan, and was awarded the Bronze Star as well as other esteemed military awards. And bravo to this great veteran, and of course all the military and their families. You know how much we love them here on the Rita Cosby Show. And everybody, help America to never ever forget the great sacrifice and courage of our veterans and their families. Donate $11 a month. That's all it takes to make such a huge difference through the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. They are the best. You've heard me talk about the smart homes and all the great projects that they do. They are changing lives. Be sure to check them out at T2T.org. That's T2T.org.
It's the Rita Cosby Show. This is the Rita Cosby Show.
And as if part of the Northeast hasn't gotten socked enough, there is another nor'easter coming. We are told another storm expected to dump a few inches of snow is going to happen on Sunday night. There's still snow on the streets of New York. Thank you, Mayor Mandani. I've never seen snow stick around as much as it has in the last few weeks. And now we may get socked yet again. So everybody across the country, especially those in the Northeast, make sure you stay warm and you stay safe. Let's go real quick to George in New Jersey on line 2. Go ahead, George.
Hi, Rita. It's George Jorge from Kearney, New Jersey. Keep up the good work. I love the show, and I believe in UFOs.
Oh, thank you. Now, why do you believe in UFOs? You believe in me, so I love that, George. Thank you for the very sweet words. And why do you believe in UFOs?
Well, I had somebody, my cousin had seen a sighting in Newark years ago, around 1964. He's gone. And, I believe it. I believe that there's another, there's UFOs in another place.
Yeah, I believe there is something else out there too, George. I believe, the universe is a very big place. I'm not sure what it is, but I do believe that there's more out there. And I don't believe people, like you said, your cousin, and also, some of these folks like Navy pilots and others. Well, hopefully we'll find out soon. Thank you, George. Have a good weekend, everybody.
It's the Rita Cosby Show.
Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our country has to offer, especially health care. Across every state, every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.